Hello, welcome to the third episode of Inner Circle. I'm Ross Monaghan.
And I'm Soundari Mukherjee.
Um, I was wondering whether you had remembered your name there for a minute, Soundari, but we're having so much fun doing these sessions. Inner Circle is about Soundari and I discussing some issues associated with AI, and we round out those conversations with an inner circle of absolutely amazing people. Who are some of our guests this week, Soundari?
Yeah, so we have Bonnie, who's been a regular, Bonnie Murthy. We have Rowena, we have Gopal, and we have Debashish coming in. We have Sarah. So we have a mix of people coming in from all around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Jeff Russell is joining us as well. Hi to Jeff, if you're there as well. We've got experts from the around the Pacific region, which is absolutely fantastic. And speaking of the Asia Pacific region, what have we got coming up in September, Soundari?
Yeah,
We've got
it's Fusion 2023, the IABCs, which is the Association of Business Communicators, Asia Pacific, the conference, which is happening in Bali this year after a break.
Yeah, absolutely. Our last conference was in Wellington or Auckland in COVID times, and I love New Zealand as well, but unfortunately we couldn't get there. But where better place for communicators in the Asia Pacific region to meet than Bali? It's going to be a great conference. You'll get to meet lots of amazing communicators, include and hear some from great speakers like myself and Soundari, both talking at the conference. So we're really, really looking forward to that. But today's topic, we're talking about leadership and authenticity. It's going to be an interesting conversation because I think there are lots and lots of issues that leaders need to think about in terms of AI issues. But last week, we were talking about jobs and a range of other issues. How did you find the conversation last week?
I think it's stoking all the fear that we definitely have about what is AI going to do for jobs, linking into the artist conversation from the week before to say what is going to happen to artists if AI can be a better artist, so to say. So talking about how it can help with innovation. So why don't we just look at a quick recap of last week's?
Yeah,
Ross?
let's have a look at some of the highlights. On to the second episode of Inner Circle. I'm Ross Monaghan.
And I'm Soundari Mukherjee.
So we're heading for a world where humans are doing the cleaning, collecting the rubbish, and AI is making the movies and making the art and poems and everything. Is that the world we want to be in?
So he had his marketing team sit down and try to see if they could do it faster with ChatGPT. And the way it worked was the following. Hey, ChatGPT, what are 5 supply chain problems facing companies today? And it spewed out 5 supply chain problems.
A lot of humanness is needed in the middle of the creative process. As Raghu said at the start, ChatGPT and a range of other AI services are pretty good at coming up with some brainstorming ideas. And
who had all this design tucked away in his drawer because he said we are too scared to take the risk. And I think that's also where AI can really play a big part. So there's this global design firm based out of Copenhagen. It's called Space 10. They enlisted generative AI to come up with a prototype for a couch in an envelope. So based on prompts that they gave for, it has to be lightweight, it has to be recyclable, it has to be easy to move and all that, so prompt-based generation. And what they found is that generative AI worked like a high-performing junior art director, meaning it had a lot of power, it had a lot of energy, it didn't get tired, it had a lot of ambition. So it could generate thousands and thousands of ideas. But humans need to come in and really coral those ideas and say, okay, thank you, thank you so much for those 5,000 additional generations and options. We need to slow down.
I love that comment that you made about it being a young and enthusiastic account director there. As an old bloke myself, I can empathise. But one of the things that struck me about using AI as a tool was that it's great at the start of the process, to brainstorm. It's great to help you refine, and maybe you can use things like, ChatGPT and other AI to question whether you're being, inclusive in your writing, if you're being grammatically correct. But there's a lot of problems in the middle, right? I mean, the IT experts call it hallucinating, which is just another word for making huge mistakes, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where this whole conversation on leadership and authenticity comes in the
Yeah.
context of AI, right? Business leaders need to build that foundation of trust with their stakeholders, build in authentic relationships in business communication, public engagement, and within the organization. So while they're communicating their goals to people to garner support, so everybody is on the same page. And that's where I think the whole strategic and tactical part of AI really comes in. There's a lot of conversation on the tactical bit, which
Yeah.
is on bringing up yeah, so just how you use it at work, and that's been going on for a long time. It's nothing new, it's already built in, like we discussed. I think understanding the potential benefits and risks and how it fits into the business strategy, how can leaders use it for decision making,
Mm.
that's really going to be what it is. And I was reading this report which EY had published recently, and they had done a study of 1,200 CEOs globally to check how they use AI and how do they plan to use technology. And
Mm.
it provided great insights on how they use it on capital allocation, investment, transformation strategies, as well as to embed sustainability into the growth agenda. So,
Mm.
really, those big picture issues. And it talked about 65% of the CEOs interviewed see that AI is a force for good, and 45% plan significant investments in AI in the next year, if they've not done it already, that is.
Yeah.
So, linking up to the employee bit, how are you investing not just in your EQ and all that, but on TQ, on people's technology quotient,
Yeah.
to drive some of this?
It's a really big issue for leaders. I mean, a lot of us are thinking about the tactical issues. And, I think thinking about these broader issues, whether it's going to make us authentic, what it's going to do to trust, I think these are things that leaders should be thinking about. And of course, there's two sides to AI leadership. Leaders thinking about AI and how to use it responsibly to ensure that their organizations are responsible and are efficient and effective. But the other side, before we go into that, and I know it's a really important issue, but I am really keen for communicators to understand that we are AI leaders as well, and that I want professional communicators, well, anyone really, to be talking about these issues, discussing the issues, because just as we do during these sessions, we raise a lot of issues and we start thinking about issues that we hadn't thought about. So thinking about these issues, ensuring that the industry adapts and acknowledges the problems so that we can benefit from all of the things that AI is good for is great. And I think if we do that, then, leaders don't have a lot to worry about. But by thinking and talking about these issues, it's going to be absolutely imperative.
No, absolutely. And, brands, leaders as brands, organizations as brands have to find ways to empathize with their audience
Mm.
even more so during these uncertain times. And that's where really sharing meaningful stories that translate into acts rather than just sympathetic words, which just brings skepticism. So if something is just churned out, uh, kind of conversation from the leaders instead of something that's thought through, building in all that empathy into their discussion, that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, Bonnie's made a great point. We have to look beyond the profit and speed-driven ethos and take ethics, data integrity, and privacy quite seriously. Yeah, great points. Jeff made some great points as well. AI has great potential to provide decision makers with the information they need to, but only if it's balanced and not influenced by others for some darker purpose. Yeah, and another great point. I mean, disinformation, we saw that through COVID times, and it's only going to increase now, and the speed of it with AI generated services as well. So thank you for those great comments.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's a great, I saw a couple of great examples. And while it happened during COVID times, I think it's a good thing for us to remember these while we're going forward. So one of it was this conversation that Arne Sorensen, who used to be the CEO of Marriott,
That's
uh,
right. Yeah.
yeah, and he came in at a very tough time. Obviously, hotel industry was one of the worst hit during COVID, and he wanted to make a personal message to his staff to come out there and say that we are there for you and this is what we are doing. Not just say words like we are there for you, but also go beyond and say this is what is happening, acknowledging the reality and coming up with a roadmap. And when he came in, and maybe we should watch the video first and talk a little bit more about it and ask our audience as well what they felt.
Yeah. Look, it's a great example of
Associates.
authentic.
I'm here to give you an update on the impact of coronavirus, or COVID-19, on our business and the steps we're taking to respond to it. Because of the profound impact COVID-19 is having on so many of us around the world, this is the most difficult video message we have ever pulled together. Our team was a bit concerned about using a video today because of my new bald look. Let me just say that my new look is exactly what was expected as a result of my medical treatments. I feel good, and my team and I are 100% focused on overcoming the common crisis we face. Now let's talk about that crisis, COVID-19. Let's start with the health challenge itself.
Yeah, look, you felt for him, and I thought the way that they used a little bit of humor there in an appropriate way. He's sick, but he's coming to do these videos. You just had to look at the comments from both staff and customers, that people really connected with that, and it really resonated.
Yeah, totally. And sadly, while he passed away further down in the year, I think it's really important to put out that meaningful message
Yeah.
and not regurgitate. So
Yeah.
again, linking up, and we saw a lot of that as well going on in terms of communication and authenticity and leadership. So
Hmm?
there was this very interesting video that was made, which was called "Every COVID-19 commercial is exactly the same." And we are talking about uniqueness, bringing the humanness into it, whereas in some ways, AI is also creating the sameness part of it. Let's have a look at that video, Ross.
Yeah, look, I love this video, and just to add to that, yeah, look, I think the ChatGPT does provide, the risk of being the same. So let's have a look and see how this all transpired during COVID. Maybe we should do one like that for Inner Circle, Soundari. That soft piano music as we get up in the morning and get ready for our live stream. Or maybe not.
The first one, when you heard it, heard the first ever one of those, it did feel very authentic. It touched a chord. somewhere, no pun intended. But as it went along, it just like it's too much. And
Yeah.
Debu is bringing up this point around bias and quality of AI output, which is something that large platforms are dealing with, right? The need to do it with human curation and slow down some of the fast aspects, which is
Yeah.
what all this regulation is also coming about, talking about how do you have freedom within a framework? How do you look at the guardrails? What are the guardrails which each of the uh, countries, organizations, communities need?
Mhm. Yeah, and Gopal's made a great point here about, I'll cut to the chase here, and customer experience at the end, because I don't know, with chatbots, I mean, I think the research says that, when they work well and you understand that it's a robot that you're talking to, that people appreciate that speeds it up. But when organizations are inauthentic and pretend that it's a human, then the experience goes bad pretty
Yeah, yeah.
quickly.
And we already saw that, not just linked to Chat GPT. I remember there was this whole a very nice article which I'll fish out at some other point of time about call centers trying to reach a customer service desk of any company currently is near impossible. You can't talk to a human. You have the bots answering if and it goes into a loop. If you're trying to solve something, you can't reach a human to solve the problem and solve the issue. So definitely, to Gopal's point on customer experience, while you're
Mm,
building in all of this, you're also driving a lot of frustration into the process of somebody who needs something very urgently, needs a human to talk to, needs somebody to go beyond the obvious tick box solution to come up with something that really needs assistance. And that's where I think a lot of work still needs to be done.
yeah, absolutely.
We did speak with Raghu, continued our conversation with Raghu on his thoughts around. Raghu is an AI researcher. For those who are joining us for the first time, his conversations in the previous times were great examples on how ChatGPT could be used or not, specifically on generative AI. And he has some thoughts on ChatGPT and leadership.
Yeah, so let's have a listen to those. He's always very colorful and makes some great points.
Okay, so another question that was asked of me was, what does this have to do with leadership communications? And I have a strong opinion on this, even if it's slightly extreme. My view is, why do you think leadership is such a difficult and important thing for us? It's because the essence of leadership is to take a large number of people and get them aligned onto a common vision. Now, the reason it's difficult is because people aren't stupid. They don't just listen to the first person who comes along and says something. They actually have to truly feel, not just hear, but feel that this is a vision that they'd like to partake in. Now, that requires A, the leader to be authentic, B, the leader to be empathetic towards the needs of all the people whose vision he or she is trying to align. And these are very, very, first of all, they're rare traits, but when they do come together, you see a moment of magic. Now, what does this have to do with generative AI? My answer is absolutely nothing, because a monkey that's pulling words out of a hat can maybe give you the facsimile of some kind of leadership, blah blah. In fact, I would go one step extreme. A leader who doesn't speak from his or her heart and has a PR department who's writing speeches for him or her or posting stuff on Twitter runs this very same danger, because they're actually turning over the keys of what is their communication and what needs to come from their heart to some department. That just one step lower than that is turning it over to ChatGPT. It's dumb, in my opinion. Don't do it.
Well, look, as a public relations lecturer, I'm not sure how I feel about that, but he does make a good point. I think to be authentic, you can't just hand over things like speeches or messages to employees to, the PR team or ChatGPT, because it's not authentic. I
Yeah.
think that's one of our questions too, right? Isn't it? So
Yeah, yeah, time for
asking people, would you hand over your keys to ChatGPT? Um, it's a really
I
interesting
think,
question.
yeah, yeah. With great expectations, there's heightened risk as well. And this clearly links to the trust factor of the kind of communication that leaders are doing, the kind of storytelling as a catalyst to restore the trust and the framework that it provides in a workplace. So, not just about what are you communicating and how are you building trust equations, it's also what stories your stakeholders are telling about you and your business. I think both ways is where the damage can be pretty severe. So, would I hand over my keys to ChatGPT? No, I'll hold its hand and I'll open the door.
Um, let's go to ChatGPT and ask it, whether we should be handing over the keys to it.
Please.
I'd be interested to see what it says. So
What?
this is ChatGPT live. Should leaders hand over their keys to ChatGPT? There's a nuanced answer to this question, and that's very diplomatic, right? With certain tasks, it should not be replaced by human leadership. Here's why: ethical decision making, limited scope, accountability, emotional intelligence, the personal touch. Hey, that's not, yeah, look, without reading it all in depth, that's not too bad an answer.
Not at all. But slightly stayed. Let's give the humans a bit more of a chance. Maybe there's something else coming up on the chat as well, Ross, on what people are thinking about. Yeah,
Yeah.
um, Gopal talks about you know they'll wonder whether, yeah, absolutely, whether the people are you're going to wonder whether it's authentic, where is it coming from. And I
Mm.
remember these leaders writing, Indra Nui, for instance, when she was Pepsi CEO, she used to write these notes to family members thanking them for allowing the employees to come into work and work extended hours and all that. If
Yep.
any one of them thought that that was going to be written by a chat gpt or a chat bot, I'm not sure if they would have felt the same kind of connection.
Yeah. Look, I mean, to me, I think this question is all about transparency. If there's one thing I've learned about organizational communication, both internal and with external communities, that, if you're upfront about how things are done or how you're writing things, people will accept that. And maybe an AI generated response, if it's labeled as generated by ChatGPT or some other AI service, or saying that AI had no hand in this message. But thinking as a communicator, I mean, if you are going to be authentic, and I would encourage people to be authentic, if you did ask ChatGPT to write your speech or your newsletter or your letter, and you put this was written by ChatGPT, what would people think? Would leaders actually do that? I think if you actually were open about it, they may question the use of these sort of services.
Yeah, yeah. There are two things in that one of the conferences which talked about the frameworks on around AI said that people should be putting a watermark around it
Yeah.
on content that was generated by AI, and linking that to there was this book, Messengers: Who Do We Listen to and Who We Don't, where it talks about when somebody communicates an idea, an audience just doesn't make judgment about the coherence of the idea and the validity of that message. They
Mm.
also make a whole range of judgments about the messenger themselves.
Of course, yeah. And in certain circumstances, as I've found myself, where I've dealt in a lot of high concern, low trust situations, more than 50% of the message, and this is borne out by both my experience, but a lot of great researchers like Dr. Peter Sandman, Dr. Vincent Cavello, more than 50% of what people take from the message is non-verbal communication. It's not what the person is saying. It's what are they doing? How do they look when they're talking about these things, and a range of other factors. So, it's hard to see that, if you're using an avatar to do that, that people are going to take out that those empathetic messages.
Yeah,
Got some
yeah.
great comments coming in. I think it's like labeling foods. We should be labeling different services. Exactly the point you're making, Soundari. Yep, absolutely, totally agree. Bonnie's saying, would you give an intern or junior credit for drafting a speech you're about to deliver? Wow, what a great point. Yeah,
Yeah.
just imagine a leader of a bigger organization standing up and speaking and say, oh, actually, the intern wrote this.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really great point and something worth thinking because whether it's a ChatGPT is a tool, whether the intern is just a tool again as well, and normally no credit is given, right? There's a whole bunch of people sitting in the background and generating stuff, creating stuff for the leaders, and the leaders fronting it.
Yeah, you
Um,
made some good points about the Edelman Trust Barometer as well, and some
yeah.
key issues there.
Yeah, yeah. I think if we quickly, element trust barometer for people who track and know, does the research around checking out which are the trusted institutions every year. And the 2023 report talked about business still coming out ahead of NGOs, government, and media. Business was ranked at worldwide, ranked at 62% in terms of, being more trustworthy, though institutional readers still continue. I mean, you can argue whether 62 is a good number or not.
Yeah,
um, I
point.
think, yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that we need to keep an eye on is when you're talking about building trust as leaders, there are all those small moments which come in which make a big difference. So when you're looking at Edelman's trust barometer for this last year, the two areas which are really key is as leaders being in trusty information source. So if you're
Mm,
delivering something which is chat gpt based, which is actually turning out to be false, and we saw quite a few ones of those happening, where people used wrong information and corrected it. And similarly, I think equally important is about the work that's done with employees. How are you really building that bond with the employees on using chat gpt as a way to enable them? How are you treating your employees? How are you being bringing in the ethics side of the conversation, the bias side of the conversation in? How are you as a leader framing policies and strategies which help organizations deal with this better?
yeah. And look, one of the things that I'm worried about is, as this slide said, uh, oh, sorry, the previous slide. Let's just go back to this. Be a trustworthy information source. One of the things I'm really concerned about for leaders is that they don't think about the importance of being transparent with AI and getting caught out using it in their communication. And once people are caught out, trust is eroded quickly, and it takes a long time for reputations to be built up again. So I think it's important to think about these things now rather than letting these mistakes happening. And also, I mean, just going back to this slide, treatment of employees. I expect my CEO to take public stand on issues like treatment
Mm.
of employees. Well, what's the biggest treatment of employee issue in 2023? And it is chat gpt and other AI services, and if they're going to be taking jobs, and are leaders talking about these issues at the moment?
Yeah.
There's lots of great resources in the Edelman Trust Barometer, so I encourage you to go and have a look at that. Now we've only got a couple of minutes left. Well, actually, to be honest, we've only got a minute left.
Uh,
This 30 seconds goes really quickly, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah. So if we could just bring in the final question as well while we are coming up with
Yeah,
our closing
goodness.
remarks. What questions should leaders be asking about AI? And we started off at the top talking about being strategic about it. There's a tactical aspect where we are talking tool driven, chatbot driven, and all that. But looking at from a strategic point of view, what are some of the issues that we need to flag? And I will also just mention about the last session conversation that we are going to have next week,
Mm,
where we'll build on this and talk about what is chat AI not really good at, especially in terms of the biases and the ethical issues that are coming about.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think that's going to be a really fascinating conversation. There are some things that AI is undoubtedly good at. I don't mind it for that brainstorming at the start. It helps me think of ideas. It helps with that creativity process. It helps me refine my work and point out errors and things like where I'm not being inclusive of people. But yeah, there are lots of things that it's not good at, as we've discussed over the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to some closing remarks from our inner circle as well. First of all, thank you so much for being there around and keeping the chat buzzing with your thoughts. So, what? Please add in your comments about confidentiality issues.
Yeah.
Definitely,
It-
definitely.
It's it's not good at keeping a secret, that's for sure. I mean, Samsung found that out to their detriment, where employees posted or asked ChatGPT questions, and that information, proprietary information, went global. Big embarrassment to the company, and I think they've pretty much banned AI now. And that's going to be a huge issue going forward as well, not only for commercial organizations with, proprietary information that they don't want made public, governments, any organization with customer information. I mean, that's been a big issue, not only in Australia, but globally as well. So lots of issues. And I can see that some of our inner circle are having troubles commenting to LinkedIn. So how about we go to ChatGPT and leave the last comment for the day with ChatGPT and ask it, what questions should AI leaders be asking? Understanding AI, absolutely. Talking about the conversation, talking about it, which is what we're doing. Thinking about the impact of AI and on people, strategy, how should you be deploying it, the ethics and fairness, AI skills and talent of employees, training people, data security, legal and regulatory compliance, and the future of AI. Lots to think about there. And that was literally done live. Didn't know what the answer was going to be. But look, I think we could build on lots of those answers. And that's what we're going to be doing in future episodes.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us today and sparking the conversation. Like we said in the first inaugural session, it's not about knowing the answers, it's about asking the questions and getting into the conversation, taking ownership of this discussion. So be part of the conversation, be part of the change. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about, as Soundari said, what AI is good at and what it's not good at. We want you to continue the conversation. We want you to be an AI leader. Ask those questions and make sure that we're using these services in appropriate ways for our organizations, in ethical, inclusive ways that are going to help our organizations go forward in a responsible way that protects our reputation. So until next week, thanks very much.
Thank you.